In your white paper, How to Save Your EHR, 6 Steps to Holistic Optimization, you talk about having a strong team. If you were to build a super team of EMR optimizers, what kind of persons would be on that team, other than Brad Pitt?
Right.
And Lorie and Angela.
And Lorie and Angela, right.
Obviously.
And possibly me, which I know I'm a good stand-in for Brad Pitt.
Well, first
Or
of all,
Jack
what you're
Black.
saying makes a lot of sense. I think you should be on the team ideally. Lorie, I'll take this one. So we're in football season right now, okay? And I like to compare my ideal optimization team to, like what you're going to pick out for your football drafts, okay? And also I want to explain the 6 steps to holistic optimization. The inspiration for that white paper was so many times when you're doing an optimization, people have tunnel vision and then they focus on the one system aspect, like just the main software, and ignoring all the peripheral softwares and moving pieces and parts and people, that are involved in the optimization. So the point of this paper is to get an accurate representation from a large sample of the organization rather than just one straight and narrow focus.
Makes sense.
So as I'm compiling my team, here's who I would pick. Number one, like we talked about before, you got to have a project manager, somebody who's going to coordinate everybody, and keep the project on track. Also, a systems expert, an application expert. This person ideally would be an outsider, only to offer a second set of eyes. And also, they have the strategic advantage of having that system configured and seeing that in a variety of different settings and spaces, so they could glean some of those good workflows and opportunities, back to your project. Having somebody from the revenue cycle, the financial side, and also the clinical side. A lot of people tend to leave these key players out of the optimization, but they're super important to have equal representation. One example is I was doing an optimization not too long ago where we were looking at a provider workflow and they were entering in these billing charges for for pregnant women. Well, they manually, the billers ended up having to look up the documentation to find out what trimester they were in before they could send out billing. Well, through a conversation, because we had these people around the optimization table, we understood and the conversations grew that everything that the clinical side does funnels down to billing. And we were able to actually modify the system to automatically add that modifier when the doctor was providing, their documentation. So it removed that manual. So having the financial and the clinical, oftentimes you have separate teams. And I'm kind of, am I Thelma or Louise, Lorie, on our team? I don't know. But I'm always, I'm Louise. I'm always that middle person. I'm the gray area. I'm actually on the ambulatory team, but I have a strong billing and EDI background. So I'm kind of that go-between to have in the middle.
Yeah.
So you definitely want representation from both sides. Obviously, you also need some super users. These are the enthusiastic people that work on the front line. They're going to be huge in your influence for acceptance, for buy-in. Also, they're going to be your biggest cheerleaders on the project. You're going to need an IT resource to work with the project manager, to work with the staff. They're going to be the liaison to all the vendors, keep all the communications important. And finally, I would recommend signing an optimizer. This could be a working, person in your organization. We see a lot of nurses being promoted to optimizer. They're going to work with your project manager very closely. They are your eyes and your ears to your optimization because oftentimes they're working on the front lines as well. And they know your workflows, but they also have an extra ear out for your IT. So that would be my dream team, ideally.
Sure. Yeah. And it's interesting that, you're like having an optimizer. I would call them Optimizer Prime just because that's what I would name them. But, and it being a nurse, the fact that you mentioned that, my wife's a nurse. And so there's a certain personality, obviously, that goes into, that being your career. And I think, that listening ear, with also a pretty, most nurses I know are pretty strong in their conviction and, what they feel and what they see. So yeah, they would make great optimizers in the sense that they're seeing a lot of different things and they're willing to advocate really, for what they think is right. Which I think is kind of what you're saying that optimizer needs to do, which is, advocate.
Yeah, and a lot of people look for an optimizer within the organization already rather than hiring from the outside because they do know the workflows. But also, sometimes the nurses or the clinical staff aren't the most, technical, but all of that can be learned with a pretty short learning curve rather than vice versa, having somebody IT and filling them in on the clinical side, although it still can be done. So.
Sure. Good. Excellent. Well, I mean, what good question didn't I ask? I think maybe that's the question I should be asking you guys. I made up questions, but what did I miss that really should be shared?
One of the things that I think is really important, and we see this a lot with optimization, is that to keep the momentum going. A lot of times when we do optimization, we see some immediate, we call them quick wins or low-hanging fruit, those things that we can do right off the bat that make an impact. And then we do those few things, and then the organization, it kind of stalls a little bit. And really just making sure that we keep that momentum going. If we have 100 things on the optimization list that we found that we could improve on, stopping at the first 25, it's not that we have to do everything, quick and fast and that sort of thing, but just spreading it out, like Angela said, or, setting expectations that are, that are going to be met, goals that are going to be met, and just making sure that we keep things moving. We see all too many times that optimization stall after a little bit of a time, which is kind of frustrating to us because we want to help them and we want to, clear some of those workflow problems and that sort of thing up. So, but it can be very overwhelming on an organization. So just making sure that the timing, like Angela said earlier, and the expectations are set early on for an optimization project are so important.
Okay, excellent.
Well, and also to add to what you want to say, Lorie, is gaining a consensus on priority. A lot of times we come back with all these ideas, and then, where do we start? So narrowing down and agreeing on priority and then getting started is important.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, ladies, you've been a wealth of information. I really appreciate, and even working with me with, all my technical difficulty. It's really, it's a sign of maturity on your part that you could put up with me this long. I really am proud of you. Thank you so much for your time, and just really appreciate again you sharing sort of where you're at and what you guys are doing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, no problem.
Bye.